I never thought the last conversation with my husband would be about our son's selfishness, but there I was, sitting beside Robert's hospital bed, watching him struggle with each breath while he told me about Michael's latest disappointment. "Margaret," Robert whispered, his voice barely audible above the heart monitor. "He called this morning asking if we could postpone the funeral. Said Claire has some networking event that could help her interior design business." My stomach dropped. "Robert, you don't mean that." "Postpone my own funeral, Margaret. As if death works around party schedule." His laugh was bitter. "I've been making excuses for our son for 35 years. Remember when he missed his graduation because he was hungover? Or when he skipped your birthday for Claire's gallery opening? Or when he couldn't visit during my first heart attack because of that skiing trip?" Each memory hit like a physical blow because they were all true. I'd spent decades convincing myself that Michael was just young, that he'd mature. But watching my husband prepare to leave this world, I couldn't hide behind those lies anymore. "He's our only child," I whispered, "and I've given him everything," Robert replied. "The best schools, opportunities, seed money for failed businesses because he couldn't commit to anything. I handed him a position at the company, and he treated it like a hobby while chasing Claire's get-rich-quick scheme." The heart monitor's beeping intensified. Robert reached for a manila folder on his nightstand, documents his lawyer had brought yesterday. "I'm thinking about legacy, Margaret, about what it really means to leave something behind that matters." "The will?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "James made the changes yesterday. Michael thinks he's going to inherit everything. The company, house, investments. He's been counting on it his whole life, treating it like his birthright." Robert opened the folder with shaking hands. "But birthright means nothing if you don't honor the person who gave it to you." "Robert, what did you do?" "I added one simple clause," he said steadily. "Anyone who doesn't attend my funeral receives nothing from my estate. Nothing." The words hung between us like a bomb. I stared at him, overwhelmed by the implications. "You can't be serious. He's your son, whatever his faults. Margaret, look at me. I'm dying. We both know I have days left, and our son can't clear his schedule to say goodbye because his wife has a party." Tears streamed down my face because I knew he was right. I'd been making excuses for Michael's behavior for so long that I'd stopped seeing it clearly. The company I built from nothing, the house we raised him in, the security I worked my life to provide. It was meant to be a foundation for him to build something meaningful. Instead, he's treated it like a trust fund, spending money before inheriting it, making plans without showing real interest in learning the business. I thought about all the times Robert had tried engaging Michael. Site visits, client meetings, employee dinners. Michael always had excuses. "What if he comes?" I asked. "What if he changes his mind? Then he inherits everything, just as planned," Robert said simply. "The clause only applies to those who don't attend. If he shows up despite his wife's party, maybe I've been wrong about him." I looked at my husband, his skin pale, breathing labored, but his eyes burning with purpose. "You're giving him one last chance," I realized. "I'm giving him the most important test of his life. And Margaret, when the time comes, remember, whatever happens is Michael's choice, not mine, not yours, his choice." Robert closed his eyes, exhaustion overtaking him. "I love our son, Margaret, but love doesn't mean enabling someone to become their worst self. Sometimes love means setting boundaries, even when they break your heart." As I watched him sleep, I realized Robert wasn't just preparing to die. He was preparing to teach our son the most important lesson of his life, that actions have consequences, that respect must be earned, and that family loyalty goes both ways. The call came at 3:47 a.m. on Tuesday. Robert's final breath was peaceful. One breath, then another, then silence. I held his hand, whispering words I should have said more often. "Thank you for everything." James Peterson, Robert's lawyer, arrived before dawn. "Everything's arranged per Robert's instructions. The service is Saturday at 2 p.m. at St. Matthew's." Saturday. 4 days for Michael to make the most important decision of his life, though he didn't know it. When I called Michael, his voice was groggy. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Michael, your father passed away an hour ago." The silence stretched forever. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Oh God, Mom, I should have been there. I was going to visit this afternoon." For a moment, I felt hope. Maybe this loss would shock him into recognizing what mattered. "The funeral is Saturday at 2 p.m., I said. "Of course, Claire and I will cancel everything. This is family." Relief flooded through me. Michael sounded genuinely shaken, genuinely sorry. The next 3 days blurred together. Robert's employees stopped by with condolences condolences and stories I'd never heard. How he'd secretly paid for medical bills, kept people on payroll during hardships, given interest-free loans for homes. He never talked about any of this, I told Sarah Chen, his longtime secretary. Because he didn't do it for recognition, Sarah replied. Mr. Robert said real generosity happens in private. Each story made me prouder of Robert and more ashamed of Michael. How had we raised a son so different from his father? Friday afternoon, Michael called. Mom, is there any flexibility with the timing tomorrow? My heart sank. What do you mean? Claire's networking event. It's being hosted by the Hartwell. You know, they own half the commercial real estate in the city. This could be huge for Claire's business. She could break into the high-end market she's been trying to reach for years. I felt like falling through space. Michael, your father's funeral is tomorrow. I know, and I feel terrible. But this event only happens once a year, and Claire's worked months to get invited. If she doesn't show, she'll never get another chance. And your father won't get a second funeral, I said sharply. Mom, please, Dad's gone. Nothing I do tomorrow will change that. But Claire's career, our future, that's still happening. I closed my eyes, seeing Robert's face clearly. This is his choice, Margaret. Michael, I'm begging you, please reconsider. Your father worked his entire life to build something meaningful. Don't you think you owe him the respect of showing up? I'll visit his grave next week. I'll bring flowers, spend time there. But tomorrow, I need to support my wife. That's what married men do. The irony was devastating. Robert had supported me through everything. Difficult pregnancy, family illnesses, business fear. He'd never once prioritized anything over family. After hanging up, I sat in Robert's study, surrounded by photos and the quote on his desk. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. Saturday dawned grey and drizzly. St. Matthew's was packed with employees, clients, community members. As I walked behind the casket, I saw faces from every part of our life together. But the one face I hoped to see wasn't there. The service was beautiful. Pastor Williams spoke about Robert's integrity. Employees shared stories of his kindness. Throughout it all, I kept glancing at the empty chair beside me. People noticed, whispering, wondering where Robert's son could be. At the graveside, James Peterson approached. I'm sorry Michael couldn't make it. He had other commitments, I said, the words tasting like ash. As they lowered Robert's casket, I thought about our son's choice. He'd chosen a party over his father's funeral, networking over family, what seemed practical over what was right. The will reading was Monday morning. I spent Sunday answering sympathy cards, trying to prepare for what was coming. Michael called twice, assuring me he'd visit soon, that he'd been thinking about me. He never asked about the funeral attendance, never seemed to realize his absence might have consequences. Monday morning, I found Michael and Claire already at James's office, both in expensive black outfits more suitable for cocktails than legal proceedings. Mom! Michael embraced me. I'm so sorry we couldn't make it Saturday, but Claire made incredible connections. Show her, honey. Claire pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos with well-dressed people. Look, Margaret, I met the Hartwells, the Somerset family, the Blackwoods. I already have 3 consultations scheduled. This could change our entire financial future. I nodded politely, but inside I was screaming. They were talking about their future while about to learn Robert's will contents. James emerged, more somber than usual. Please, come in. As we settled into chairs, I could see anticipation in Michael's eyes. He was finally going to inherit his father's empire. James opened thick documents. Before we begin, my condolences again. Robert was not only a client, but a dear friend. Thank you, Michael said impatiently. Now, shall we proceed? James looked at me with something like sympathy. He knew what was coming, and I sat there, preparing to watch my son learn the hardest lesson of his life. James Peterson's voice was steady as he began reading, but I could hear underlying tension. He knew what was coming. Michael and Claire sat obliviously, probably mentally spending money they believed they were about to inherit. I, Robert James Morrison, being of sound mind, declare this my last will and testament, James began. First, to my beloved wife Margaret, I leave our family home and $2 million, ensuring she can live comfortably without financial worry. Michael shifted impatiently. $2 million was nice for me, but he was waiting for the big reveal. Second, to my loyal employees of 10 years or more, I leave individual bequests. James read through a long list. Tommy Reeves received $150,000 for 22 years of service. Sarah Chen got $200,000. The amounts were substantial, life-changing money for working families. Claire looked confused. When does he get to the main inheritance? Third, I established the Robert Morrison Foundation for Young Entrepreneurs, funded with $8 million. This foundation will provide apprenticeships and seed money to disadvantaged youth wanting to learn trade and start businesses. $8 million. Michael's face went pale. That was $8 million he wouldn't inherit. Fourth, Morrison Construction Company, including all equipment and properties, I leave to be divided equally among employees with 15 years or more, to operate as a worker-owned cooperative. Deafening silence. Michael's mouth fell open, cycling through confusion, disbelief, and growing anger. Wait, he said, voice cracking. What about me? The family legacy. I'm his son, his only child. James looked directly at Michael. There's one more section, a final clause your father added days before his death. Michael gripped his chair arms. What clause? Finally, I want to address my son, Michael Robert Morrison. I have loved him deeply and hope to leave him the bulk of my estate, trusting he would use it wisely and honor the values we tried to instill. However, I realize true inheritance must be earned through respect, loyalty, and honoring family bonds even when inconvenient. Michael leaned forward, breathing shallow, face flushed with panic. Therefore, I add this conditional clause. Any beneficiary who fails to attend my funeral shall forfeit their entire inheritance, with their portion redistributed among other beneficiaries. This includes my son Michael. If he chooses to prioritize other commitments over saying goodbye to his father, then he has chosen what matters most, and his inheritance will reflect that choice. The words hung like a guillotine blade falling. Michael stared as if he hadn't heard correctly. No, he whispered. That can't be legal. You can't disinherit someone for missing a funeral. I'm afraid it's perfectly legal, Michael. Your father was very specific and of sound mind. I advised him of implications, and he was adamant. Claire exploded. This is insane. He can't do this. We had plans, commitments based on this inheritance. Michael is his son, his only son. He didn't give it to strangers, I said quietly. He gave it to people who showed up, people who honored him. Michael turned desperately to me. Mom, we didn't know about this clause. If we'd known, of course we would have come. It was just bad timing. Michael, I interrupted, your father spent his last weeks hoping you would visit, hoping you would show you cared about something other than money and social climbing. When he asked you to be at his funeral, you chose a party instead. It wasn't just a party, Claire shrieked. It was business. How were we supposed to know the old man would pull something like this? Her disrespect, calling Robert the old man, sent fury through me. Get out, I said, standing. Maybe we can contest the will, Michael pleaded. Prove Dad wasn't thinking clearly. Your father's judgment was crystal clear, James interjected. I spent hours with him discussing his wishes. He was lucid, rational, and absolutely certain. He even had psychiatric evaluation to prevent challenges. Michael slumped back, reality sinking in. Everything he'd counted on was gone. Not through accident or misunderstanding, but because of his choice. How much was I supposed to inherit? He asked weakly. James consulted notes. Approximately $28 million total. Claire made a wounded sound. $28 million. Gone. Because she'd insisted on a networking event instead of a funeral. This is your fault, she turned on me. You could have talked him out of this. Instead, you let a bitter old man destroy our lives. I looked at this woman who'd turned my son into a reflection of her worst qualities. Your lives aren't destroyed, Claire. You're healthy, educated, able to work. You just can't do it with Robert's money. But we were counting on that money, Michael whined. We have debts, commitments. I was going to expand Claire's business, buy a vacation home. We were going to live the life we dreamed of. Dreams entirely dependent on your father's death, I observed. How does that not strike you as wrong? For a moment, I saw a flicker of the little boy I'd raised, capable of shame. But it passed quickly, replaced by sullen entitlement. After they left, James and I sat in silence. Are you at peace with Robert's decision? He asked. I considered carefully. James, Robert's final gift to Michael wasn't the inheritance he lost. It was the lesson. For the first time, Michael is facing real consequences for his choices. Over the following months, I watched Michael and Claire's life unravel. Without expected wealth, their expensive lifestyle became unsustainable. Claire's business struggled without capital. Their social circle distanced itself. Michael was forced to take a real job at a marketing firm where nobody cared about his name. Claire took on clients she'd previously considered beneath her. Mom, I'm drowning, he told me during one desperate call. I never realized how much money Dad was was quietly giving us over the years. It was true. Robert had been supplementing their lifestyle for years. Vacations, insurance, dinners. That flow had completely dried up. Do you understand why your father did what he did? I asked. Long pause. I realized Dad had been disappointed in me for years. Maybe he was right to be. First time I'd heard him admit fault. I keep thinking about all the opportunities he gave me that I ignored. I treated his life's work like a backup plan, and Claire has been so angry, blaming everyone except herself. But maybe we created this situation ourselves. I felt hope. Maybe Robert's lesson was sinking in. 6 months later, Claire left Michael for a divorce attorney who could provide the lifestyle she felt entitled to. The divorce was expensive, costing Michael his meager savings. But something interesting happened after Claire left. Without her pressure to maintain appearances, Michael began to change. He threw himself into work with dedication I hadn't seen since childhood. He moved to a modest apartment, traded his expensive car for something practical, began living within his means for the first time. 2 years after Robert's death, Michael called on what would have been his father's birthday. Mom, I went to Dad's grave today. I wanted to tell him I finally understand what he was trying to teach me. What's that? That being a man isn't about what you inherit or own. It's about what you build with your own hands, what you contribute, how you treat people who depend on you. I spent 35 years thinking I was entitled to his success without earning it. I was too arrogant to listen. I heard genuine regret, hard-won wisdom from experiencing real consequences. Your father never stopped believing you could become the man he raised you to be. I'm trying, Mom. It's hard starting over at 35, but I'm trying. I've been thinking about trade school, learning something practical like Dad always talked about. Maybe I can't inherit his legacy, but maybe I can build one of my own. For the first time since Robert's death, I felt genuinely proud of our son. As I sit here now, 3 years later, I think about the choice Robert gave Michael, not just about the funeral. That was the catalyst. The real choice was whether to learn from mistakes or remain trapped in entitlement. Michael finally chose growth over grievance, responsibility over resentment. He may never have the material wealth his father wanted to give him, but he's gained something more valuable, knowledge that true security comes from what you create, not inherit. Robert's will wasn't cruelty, it was love. Tough love that forces someone to become their best self. He gave our son the most precious gift a parent can offer, the opportunity to discover his own strength. The empty chair at Robert's funeral became the catalyst for Michael's transformation, from selfish boy to responsible man. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't what we receive, but what we're forced to earn. Robert knew that all along. He just had to find a way to teach it to our son. And finally, the lesson took.